What's up? Welcome back. Right out the gate, I want to cut through the noise and tell you what matters. There's a real, practical backup plan the Cowboys can use if they don't get George Pickens signed to a long-term deal. And it isn't some complicated mystery. It's the franchise tag. Now you've probably heard that phrase a million times, but for most fans the real question is this. What would that mean for the team and for the rest of the roster? So let's walk through it straight. First, the idea the channel brought up, the Cowboys are likely keeping tag as an option, makes a lot of sense. Tagging Pickens would give Dallas control of him for another year while they figure out a longer-term approach. It buys time. It also forces a tough conversation about how much cap space the Cowboys want, boxed up in one player for a single season, versus spreading guarantees over years. You care because that decision changes who the team can keep around them. That's why this isn't just a contract conversation, it's a roster conversation. Quick fan poll. Do you want the Cowboys to franchise tag Pickens for a year? Or would you rather they give him a multi-year deal now? Type tag if you're okay with the one-year bridge, or long if you want them to lock him up for the window. While you type that, let me make something else clear. This kind of move isn't hypothetical theater. Teams tag players when the cap picture is messy or when they want player control without long-term commitment. A tag for a top WR sits at a very high number, and we're talking tens of millions for that one season. And that's real, immediate cap space you have to carve out. So if the Cowboys go tag, they'll need to free up room. That's where the dominoes start to fall, and the rest of this video will cover the likeliest dominoes and how that affects you as a fan. But before we get into the math in the next chapter, here's the reason you should care in one sentence. Whether the Cowboys tag Pickens or sign him long-term changes the kind of roster they field next season. Bigger move now or more flexibility later. If you're watching and you like this breakdown, hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed yet, we're trying to hit 16,000 subs. Click subscribe and join the channel so you don't miss the cap breakdown and the concrete names I'll walk through in a minute. Alright, coming up next, I'll explain exactly how the tag affects the salary cap and which veterans or contract moves would realistically make room. If you want the straight cap math and the names that could move, stick around. When you start talking about the franchise tag, you have to remember it's not just a line in a headline, it's real cash, and it hits the salary cap like a hammer. For wide receivers, that tag figure sits around $28 million for the season. And here's the catch. The team has to have that money ready and liquid. That means you can't hide it behind creative guarantees or push it into future years. The tag number goes straight onto your cap sheet the moment it's applied. That's why most front offices prefer a structured deal over a tag. It gives you flexibility. But if Dallas chooses to tag George Pickens, they'll need to make hard calls somewhere else because that money doesn't just appear out of thin air. Now, the conversation that's already brewing among insiders is about who could be the cap casualties or restructuring candidates if that tag becomes reality. Malik Hooker counts a solid chunk against the future cap, and Terrence Steele's number is even bigger. Moving one of them, or restructuring both, could easily clear enough space to tag Pickens without gutting other parts of the roster. But here's where it gets complicated. Every time you move or cut a veteran, you're not just moving numbers on a spreadsheet. You're changing the locker room chemistry. You're moving leadership, experience, and relationships that matter on Sundays. And that's what this front office has to weigh. You and I know the Jones family loves to keep their core together, especially when they feel like the championship window is open. The window right now feels like 3, maybe 4 seasons max, and it's shrinking fast. So a tag makes sense only if it buys them time to get a long-term deal done later, not if it becomes a yearly cycle of short-term band-aids. Because let's be honest, Cowboys fans have seen enough of those. The other angle worth remembering is how the cap works year to year. Even if the top-line number rises, A tag of nearly $30 million for one player in one position group still locks a ton of flexibility. That's money that could go toward a rotational pass rusher, another veteran corner, or offensive line depth. All areas the Cowboys will need to address, especially after Micah Parsons left for Green Bay. Losing a star like that changes how this defense will need to be supported financially. You can't just replace him in production or cost overnight. So here's the heart of it. If the Cowboys go the tag route, they'll probably have to say goodbye to one or two veterans they actually like. The fans might not love those headlines, but the math doesn't leave much choice. Still, there's a case for doing it. The tag keeps Pickens under control, while the team figures out what the offense really looks like with both him and CeeDee Lamb working together over a full stretch. The chemistry is still developing, and if they think this duo can be elite, then paying to keep the experiment alive one more year makes sense. Let me throw this to you. If it meant tagging Pickens but losing one solid starter like Hooker or Steele, would you still do it? Type yes if you'd pay that price to keep Pickens, or no if you'd rather spread that money around the roster. Either way, we can all agree this team can't afford another cap mess that drags into camp. And that brings us to what really set this whole story on fire: the explosion of media takes, the finger-pointing, and the locker room noise that followed the "downhill since CeeDee came back" comment. Because numbers and contracts are one thing, but narratives can break a team faster than a bad cap hit. Up next, we're diving straight into that clash between Cowboys media and Cowboys players. The attack that had fans arguing all week. If you're following along and want that breakdown, hit that like button to help this video reach more Cowboys fans and get us closer to 16,000 subscribers. Now let's talk about how one reckless comment turned into a full-on storm inside Cowboys Nation. So here's where everything blew up. The talk around George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb didn't just stay about football. It turned into a full-blown fight over how Cowboy stories are told. The whole thing started with that moment on the DLS Cowboys podcast, when Clarence Hill tossed out that line about the offense going downhill since CeeDee came back. Now, maybe he thought he was just being provocative, but what that kind of comment really does is plant a seed. It creates the kind of headline that can echo in a locker room. The original creator of that clip, and a lot of fans online, fired back hard, saying this isn't just about opinions, it's about responsibility. Because in a city where every quote becomes a headline, small comments turn into real distractions for the guys actually playing on Sundays. And you could hear the frustration in the response. He called it out, said this type of talk is irresponsible, said it creates distractions that the team then has to answer for. And honestly, he's not wrong. Think back to how many times in recent years a narrative built from nothing and somehow made it to the players' ears. Suddenly, reporters are asking about fake trade rumors, locker room tension, or chemistry issues. It's exhausting. That's why you heard that anger. He wasn't just mad at one reporter. He was tired of the pattern. When he compared it to how people talked about Pickens before the trade deadline, the made-up story that the Cowboys might move him, that was his point. These narratives don't just float harmlessly online. They get inside the building. Players start getting questions they shouldn't have to answer, and coaches have to waste time calming down speculation. And if you think that doesn't matter, remember how many times we've seen this team get caught in media-driven storms that had nothing to do with football. For a roster that's already adjusting after losing a presence like Micah Parsons, who's now a Green Bay Packer, the last thing they need is more noise from their own backyard. But here's the other side. The local media guys, the Clarence Hills and Jeff Kavanaughs of the world, they've been covering this team for years. They have relationships, connections, and audiences that trust them. So when they speak, even casually, fans take it seriously. That's why their words carry extra weight. What's why it? And that's why fans react so strongly when they feel those same voices are stirring the pot. It's a cycle that keeps feeding itself. The more outrage it creates, the more clicks it gets, and the harder it becomes for real football talk to stay on top. Let me ask you something. When you hear a comment like, "The offense has gone downhill since CeeDee came back," do you take that as fair criticism or as someone chasing a headline? Type fair if you think it's a valid opinion, or circus if you think it's just stirring drama. I'm genuinely curious how you see it, because this is where fan perception matters. When fans echo bad narratives, it gives them power. What made that rant hit harder was the way it defended the players. It wasn't about pretending everything's perfect. It was about saying, "Let these guys figure it out." That's the point. Offenses need time. Quarterbacks and receivers need reps. Sometimes it doesn't click immediately, but when it does, it's explosive. We've seen that before. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith worked it out in Philly. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in Cincinnati. Even Mike Evans and Chris Godwin down in Tampa. Those duos had moments of overlap before they found rhythm. Why can't it be the same in Dallas? Why do we have to jump straight to, "It's not working"? And that's what fans forget sometimes. This is a good problem. Having two top-tier receivers isn't dysfunction. It's leverage. It forces defenses to pick their poison. So why turn that into a debate about who gets more targets? Dak Prescott's job is to find the open man, not to choose a favorite. Some games it'll be Pickens, some it'll be CeeDee. That's balance, not division. The frustration you heard in that clip came from someone defending that idea. That balance takes time and patience, something the fan base and the local press don't always have much of. Still, this whole thing exposed something deeper about how Dallas coverage works now. A lot of traditional reporters have turned into personalities, trying to live in both worlds, journalist and influencer. And when that happens, objectivity starts to slip. The line between analysis and entertainment gets blurry. Fans get louder, players get frustrated, and suddenly the conversation shifts from strategy to social media noise. The creator said he misses the days when reporters were just reporters, and honestly, a lot of fans probably agree. So what do we do with that? We pay attention, we call out nonsense when we see it, but we don't let it divide the fan base. That's what the real Cowboys community does. It protects the team while keeping standards high. And if you've watched long enough, you know this organization has weathered worse storms than a couple of bad takes online. They'll figure it out, and as fans, we've got to stay grounded in facts, not feed the outrage machine. Next up, we'll pull everything together. What this all means for the team's direction, what's most likely to happen with Pickens, and how the Cowboys can move forward from this without losing focus. If you've stuck with me this far, drop a like to help the channel hit our goal of 16,000 subscribers, and stick around for the final take. This next part's where we get to predictions. The big question: tag, sign, or something else entirely. All right, Cowboys Nation, let's put all the noise aside and talk straight. What really matters from all this? The so-called CeeDee Pickens drama might have made headlines, but if you look deeper, it's just another reminder of how much pressure this team carries every single week. Every throw, every target, every post-game quote becomes a story. And that's what comes with being the Dallas Cowboys. The spotlight never turns off. Here's the reality. This offense still runs through CeeDee Lamb. He's the #1 guy, period. Even if Pickens has that fiery personality and wants the ball, which you love to see in a receiver, the Cowboys know Lamb is the consistent chain mover, the technician, the route artist. What Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer have to figure out now is how to let both thrive without it turning into a "who's the alpha" conversation. And make no mistake, that's possible. If anything, it should motivate both of them to raise their game. And here's where I think the front office plays it smart. Don't overreact. Don't feed the media. Jerry and Stephen Jones know how the headlines work. They've lived through Des Bryant, Terrell Owens, Amari Cooper, you name it. They've seen this movie before. The goal isn't to trade anyone or to make some statement move. The goal is chemistry, not chaos. The truth is, both of these receivers make Dak better in different ways. CeeDee opens up the middle. Pickens stretches the field vertically. You lose one, you lose that balance. And that's what a lot of these debates miss. Dallas doesn't need to choose. They need to blend. Pickens is still adjusting to a more disciplined offense after leaving Pittsburgh. He's learning timing routes, sight reads, and spacing, things that take time to click. And while he's learning, CeeDee's presence helps steady the passing game. If you watch the tape, you can see it. When Lamb draws safety help, Pickens often gets isolated one-on-one. That's not dysfunction, that's design. Now, let's zoom out and talk about the big picture. Because this isn't just about two receivers. It's about leadership. It's about whether Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy can keep control of the locker room when narratives like this explode online. The difference between a contending team and a collapsing one often comes down to this exact situation. Whether you let the media dictate your story, or you write it yourself. And right now, with how Dak has handled things publicly, staying calm, staying focused, that's exactly what you want from your quarterback. You can tell the locker room's watching how Dak reacts. When he stays cool, they stay cool. And the same goes for CeeDee. He hasn't taken the bait, hasn't fired back online, hasn't turned this into a war of words. That's growth. 2 years ago, he might have responded differently. But now he's the face of the franchise, and he's acting like it. So what happens next? Expect a statement game. That's usually how these stories end in Dallas. Not with a quote, but with a performance. Every time the media stirs up drama, this team seems to find a way to answer on the field. And if you look at the schedule ahead, a primetime matchup against the Eagles, then the 49ers right after. This is the perfect stage for CeeDee and Pickens to silence everyone at once. Imagine that. Both go over 100 yards, Dak throws 3 touchdowns, and the next morning every show flips from tension to connection. That's how quickly narratives change in this league. But one last thing, and I want you to drop your thoughts in the comments for this. Do you think Dallas needs to add one more piece to this offense before the playoff push? Maybe a veteran tight end, or even another slot weapon? Or do you think this roster, as it is right now, can make a real run if everyone locks in and stays focused? Because as much as we talk about media noise, sometimes it's a move behind the scenes that shifts everything. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. This team is too talented to let talk shows or tweets write their story. The offense isn't going downhill. It's finding rhythm. And when that rhythm hits, with Dak, CeeDee, Pickens, and a balanced attack, it's going to be dangerous. The kind of dangerous that makes people eat their words on Monday morning. So let's close this one out with the same energy we started. Ignore the noise, trust the process, and remember, this is our team. Whether it's praise or criticism, the Cowboys always draw attention because they matter. And that's something most teams would kill for. If you're proud to ride with this team through all the highs and lows, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's hit that 16K milestone together. We'll keep breaking every story, every rumor, and every bit of truth. Because no one covers America's team like Cowboys News TV.